Welcome to The Explainer. Let me ask you something. What if I told you that some of your most popular, best-selling products are actually losing you money? Today, we're going to figure out how to find the true cost of everything you make and sell.
We're going to dive deep into a really powerful accounting tool called activity-based costing, or ABC for short. And by the time we're done, you're going to have a super clear way to decide if this is a game changer for your business or, just an expensive distraction you should probably avoid.
All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll look at the hidden problems with old school accounting. Then, we'll figure out the perfect conditions where a tool like ABC can really shine. After that, we'll weigh the amazing benefits against some pretty serious drawbacks. And we'll wrap it all up with a simple checklist to help you make that final call. So, what's so broken about the way we've always done things? Well, the big issue with traditional costing is that it's kind of like a blunt instrument. It takes all your overhead, everything from the factory's electric bill to supervisor salaries, and just smears it evenly across all your products, usually based on how many you make. Just think about what that means for a second. When you're just using these broad averages, you completely lose sight of what any single product really costs to make. You could be selling your most complex items for way too little and your simplest ones for way too much. I mean, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot without even knowing it. It's pretty clear we need a much sharper tool for the job. And that sharper tool is activity-based costing. Right. So if traditional costing is that blunt instrument, think of ABC as a surgeon's scalpel. It is designed to cut through all that noise and give you a level of precision that the old methods just can't touch. So instead of throwing all your overhead costs into one giant pot, ABC breaks it all down. It looks at the specific activities that are actually driving your costs, things like setting up a machine, doing a quality inspection, or processing an order. Then it carefully traces the cost of those activities to the products that actually use them. And boom, you get a much, much more accurate picture of reality. But, and this is a big but, this scalpel is not meant for every surgery. Look, ABC is incredibly powerful, but it is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It takes a lot of time and resources, so you have to be really sure the payoff is going to be worth the pain. So let's run a little litmus test and see where this thing truly shines. First up, it's all about diversity and complexity. If your factory is just churning out thousands and thousands of identical widgets using the exact same process, honestly, ABC isn't going to tell you much you don't already know. But imagine you make a simple, mass-produced item right next to a super customized low-volume one. That's when ABC becomes a superstar, uncovering huge, hidden cost differences. Okay, the next critical piece of the puzzle is how big your overhead costs are. Direct costs, like the steel for a car door, that's easy to track. The real nightmare is figuring out where to put all those huge, indirect overhead costs. If they're just a tiny slice of your total spending, the effort of ABC might not be worth it. But if overhead is a giant chunk of your costs, you absolutely have to have an accurate way to assign. And just take a look at this. For a company like this one, a mind-blowing 65% of a product's cost is tied up in overhead. Now, imagine trying to spread that massive cost around based on a simple average, like how many units you make. It would be a total mess. You'd be hiding your most profitable products and making others look like winners when they're actually losing you money. This is the exact kind of business that screams for ABC. And that brings us to our last condition. Let's use that toy car example. Say you make two types. One is a standard model, you make thousands of them. The other is a limited edition custom car, made in really small batches. It needs special paint, extra quality checks, complex machine setups that take forever. Now, traditional costing, because it's based on volume, would barely assign any overhead to that custom car. But ABC, it sees the activities, the extra inspections, the long setup times, and it correctly assigns those costs, revealing that the custom car is way, way more expensive to produce. Okay, so we've nailed down the ideal situation for using ABC. If your business checks those boxes, high overhead, diverse products, complex operations, what's actually in it for you? What's the payoff? Let's dig into the major benefits this kind of precision can really unlock. It all kicks off this incredible chain reaction. See, it all starts with getting your product costs right. And once you have that clarity, it just ripples through every big decision you make, from how you price things and what you sell, all the way to making your operations more efficient. And it totally transforms your ability to drive real, actual profit. So first and foremost, you get way smarter about pricing. When you know exactly what a product costs you can price it with total confidence. This lets you finally answer that million-dollar question. Which of our products are actually making us money, and which ones are just secretly bleeding us dry? Then you can shift your focus, your marketing, your sales, everything towards your true winners. Next up, your ability to control costs gets a massive upgrade. Remember how ABC connects costs to specific activities? So let's say you find out your machine setup cost pool is out of control, and you also know the driver is the number of setups. Well, now you've got a clear target. You can work to reduce how many setups you do, maybe by running larger batches, or you can analyze the setup process itself to make it faster and cheaper. You're not guessing anymore, you're performing surgery on your inefficiencies. And finally, all of this comes together in a huge way. You get much better profitability analysis. Armed with accurate data, you can make smarter, more strategic moves. You might even discover that a certain customer who buys a lot from you is actually unprofitable because they're always placing these tiny, complex orders. This lets you focus on creating long-term value, which at the end of the day is the name of the game. Now, all those advantages sound pretty incredible, don't they? And they are. But before we all get too excited and run out to implement ABC, we need to have a serious reality check. This level of precision, well, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag, and we need to be really honest about the challenges involved. And this is the fundamental trade-off right here. You've got the promise of financial precision, but the reality is a high implementation cost. You have the promise of controlling every inefficiency, but the reality is a complex, time-sucking analysis. And the promise of optimizing your profit is met with the hard truth that this tool, it's just not right for everybody. And let's not sugarcoat this. The number one disadvantage is the sheer cost and complexity of getting this thing up and running. I mean, think about it. Identifying every single business activity, finding what drives its cost, measuring everything, building the system to track it all. For a big company with hundreds of products, this is a gigantic, expensive, and all-consuming project. So the key is knowing when to just walk away. If your overhead costs are tiny, or if production volume really is the main driver of your costs, ABC is just overkill. If you only make one product, or if all your products are pretty much identical, all that extra effort is just wasted. And one last important point. It's not required for your official financial reports, so you can't even justify the cost by saying you need it for compliance. All right, we've seen the good, the bad, and the really expensive. So now, let's put it all together into one clear final framework to help you decide if going on this ABC journey is actually worth it for your business. And here it is. Think of this table as your ultimate cheat sheet. On the left, you've got the green flags, lots of different products, high overhead, complexity driving your costs, small batches. If your business is ticking these boxes, you should seriously consider ABC. But on the right, you've got the red flags, similar products, low overhead, costs driven by volume, and long, steady production runs. If that sounds more like you, then the cost and hassle of ABC will probably outweigh any benefits you'd get. And that really brings us to our final thought here. We've talked a lot about the cost of implementing ABC, but after seeing everything it can uncover, maybe the question you should be asking yourself is this: what is the true hidden cost of not knowing your costs? What's the price you're paying for making bad decisions on pricing, on your product mix, on your whole strategy, all because you're flying blind? That is the real question.